All right, aim 10.5, what was the Protestant Reformation and why did it occur? And we just talked about some responses to the do now, so here we go. All right, I'll give you a second. All right, so here's the story. Year 1517, a big church burns down. And the Catholic Church, not exactly, cash rich, got plenty of land, right? But they figure, why should we pay to rebuild this church when maybe we can get our followers to donate money and we can use their donated money to rebuild this church? Seems reasonable. So they put it out there. Well, then it becomes, well, how are we gonna convince people to donate money for the rebuilding of this church? So they say, I know, we will tell them, if you donate money to this cause, we will wipe away your sins. Clean slate. Do-over. This is an attractive offer, and pretty soon they realize that when they put this offer out there, they bring in a lot more money than they ever needed. And then they realize, wait a second, this could be a real thing. We can bring a lot of revenue in with this particular idea, right? So this becomes what's called the sale of indulgences. Forgiveness of sins by the Pope in exchange for money donations to the Catholic Church. So in other words, you donate money to the Catholic Church, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how many, you axe murdered a dozen people last week. That doesn't matter. Your sins are forgiven. You're back on the path to heaven. God bless you. Thanks for your money. Right? So this idea is, letting people kind of get around the morality, of acting right with money donations. Needless to say, this doesn't really align with the spirit of kind of traditional church practices and ideas, right? So you can see how this kind of gets a little unsavory. All right, I'll give you a second. So this whole idea of the sale of indulgences is kind of ugly anyway, right? It's kind of profiteering off of faith. It's like this hideous collision of kind of gross capitalism, and faith. And it's built on the premise that the Pope has the ability to forgive sins. I think the common conception in the Catholic world now is that it's not necessarily people that, people within the church, the Pope, the priests, whoever. It's not necessarily people who forgive sins, but it is God who forgives sins. So, this kind of takes this idea and kind of twists it a little bit, right? So if we convince people that convince people of the idea that it is human beings who have the ability to forgive sins, then human beings are corruptible, and this is an example of that corruption, right? So Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Inevitably, students kind of mix those two figures up all the time, but this is the first one. This is the original, Martin Luther, okay, German guy, 1517. All right. He calls BS on this whole operation, this whole idea that you can donate money and the Pope will wipe away your sins. And he lists his complaints about the Catholic Church, namely the sale of indulgences, in this document called the 95 Theses. The 95 Theses is 95 complaints against the Catholic Church and some things that they do kind of on a regular basis that he disagrees with. He writes this out and nails it to the front door of his church in a town called Wittenberg, Germany in 1517, and he leaves it there for the church officials to read. And the church officials begin reading it and sharing it with each other, and it kind of starts to become popular. The other interesting thing here is that this goes right along with the creation of the printing press, and its first use kind of on a widespread basis with great kind of effect. So it's almost poetic if you think about it, because it seems like science and religion are always kind of fighting with each other. And in this particular instance, science in the form of technology, right? This invention of the printing press, science and religion are coming together to with great effect to bring great change to the world. So it's these two entities that typically argue with each other are kind of all of a sudden find themselves aligning together to really kind of change the course of human history. And that's kind of an interesting aspect of this. So the printing press enables the document to be copied and spread quickly. This is, profound for a number of reasons. Before the printing press, by the time you get a hold of any kind of news or anything like that, it's months and months or years and years old. Okay. The printing press changes this because it makes news current. By the time, because of the printing press, you can read something, it can be copied over and over again and spread throughout Europe. And when you get it in your hands and you're reading it, this is something that's actually still going on, or at the very least happening very, very recently. So this changes the way news is spread. So when people get their hands on the 95 Theses, they can participate in a movement in protest of the Catholic Church that is currently still going on. And that's a huge, huge thing. This is the impact of the printing press on the Protestant Reformation is similar to the impact of social media, for example, on a lot of the social movements that we see today in our world. Okay, that's the idea. Word of mouth spreads super fast because of these social media platforms that spread these messages. The printing press had that same impact on the Protestant Reformation. So it's kind of, very rudimentary, very old school, this printing press, right? This is kind of what it looks like. And the general idea is you change these letters on the, the layout here to spell out the first page of your document. And then you put ink and, paint it with ink and put paper in there. And then you press it with this thing here. And there, bang, you have a copy of page one. And then you slide another page in, bang, you got another copy of page one, right? So this thing, you can just make copies really, really quick. Well, this is just one of them, but imagine you had one for every page of your document, right? How fast could you produce, documents and copies, right? So that's in general kind of the way it worked.